Seeing none, thank you, Amelia. Committee, maybe this would help. I'm going to offer the First Amendment on the bill. I know that's unusual, but we did get an email from the municipalities. I appreciate their effort and all of the groups that have worked with us on putting the best legislation forward. In their suggestions, item 2 is to clarify the cost included and the charges included, and the cost would be limited to that the clerk could charge the taxing authority only postage and printing reimbursement. So therefore, the clerks would not, it would clarify the burden of the process for the cost. It would be postage and printing that they could charge the governing body. Are there any questions on the amendment? Do I have a second? I'll make a motion to move that we amend the bill clarifying that the cost would be limited to reimbursing the printing and postage from the clerks to the governing body. Senator Alley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the printing, is that from a printing company, or would that be in-house printing and labor and all that?
That is up to the discretion of the clerk and how they want to operate.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. It's been moved by Senator Tyson, seconded by Senator Alley. Any discussion on the motion? Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. So are there any other questions, discussion, amendments? Senator Stafford.
Thank you, Chairman. It was also brought to me concern that starting this January the 1st doesn't allow the counties to update software and move around to where they can make this happen.
That's a great question, and it's not implemented if they keep the revenue neutral. They won't have to implement it. So they do have 6 months, or however, if the bill wouldn't have been vetoed last year, we wouldn't be facing that question, because that was their argument for killing the bill last year, was that they didn't have enough time to implement. So if there is a county that keeps revenue neutral rate, then it won't be an issue. But if they decide to increase the dollar amount that they want to collect from property taxes, then they will have to implement the system. Senator Corson.
Question on the revenue neutral rate. My understanding is that it doesn't account for any inflation. So in real dollar terms, their ability to make purchases year over year would be actually decreased unless they wanted to go through the process of seeking to exceed the revenue neutral rate. Am I correct about that?
Senator Corson, that is correct. The reason it doesn't include inflation is all we have to do is look to the property tax lid. The lid has a automatic value that it increases over the CPI index every year, and every year property tax owners have that. Almost every county is increasing that to the maximum, if not beyond, because of other exclusions. And so all this is doing, it's saying we want to be transparent. If you need an increase because of inflation, let your taxpayers know. I'm sure they understand that. And one of the things that did not come up in the hearing yesterday, we modeled this legislation off of Utah, Tennessee, but Minnesota is another state that uses very similar language as this. And the property taxes in Minnesota are extremely high. So if the locals don't participate in the process and get involved, this doesn't lower your property taxes. All this does is allows the opportunity to participate before a property tax increase occurs.
No, I appreciate that explanation and clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, it does not stop a tax increase by any means, but it allows individuals or entities to participate before the increase occurs. Now we just get the increase, and then the only input that you have at that time is to pay under protest. And yes, you can speak at the budget meetings, but we've all seen how the mill levy, I didn't raise your taxes, in fact, I lowered your mill levy. But our constituents know they're writing a bigger check. So the logistics isn't working, we all know this, and we just want the transparency. Kansans are very reasonable. They understand we need roads, we need schools. This is not an attempt to harm anybody. In fact, I think we should focus on one portion of, one of the biggest items that we've heard is the property tax lid and how harmful it was to local communities and local governments. This removes the lid completely. So, Senator Corson, another question?
No other questions, thank you.
Senator Stafford?
I have one more, thank you.
Yes.
While Reno and Kingman counties are two of the 66 counties with declining populations and contracting economies, we do aspire to grow someday. The question is, how does this take into effect the tax lid and growth, population growth, economic growth?
The tax lid's completely removed in this legislation.
Well, I mean, the neutral
The
value.
new growth.
Growth, yeah.
That is another, it's, you explain to your constituents, we need a tax increase because we have new growth. So it's transparent. They will know why that increase is incurring. This is all for transparency.
Okay.
So we don't want any automatic increases. If we do, then we're losing the intent of the bill because it just allows, we want the transparency of the bill. That's what our goal is here. Not local control, not just transparency. Any other questions? Senator Alley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding that nothing in this bill prohibits the taxpayer from protesting their appraised value. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Committee, any other questions? I know this is quick, committee. The first time this bill went across the Senate floor last year, and there have been some minor changes, but the major concept, it passed 39-0. The valuation portion of it, I don't remember what the exact vote was on it, but it was, I think it was 39-1. So the bill, it was non-controversial at that point, at least passing the Senate. The second time it passed, it was in a conference committee report, 2702. I remember that there were 2 senators that voted no. They're no longer in the body. There were a couple of senators that passed on the legislation, but we did have supermajority on it. And the House also passed it with supermajority. Any other questions?
Could we have some discussion about the fiscal note? I've just saw this today. Could we have some explanation or discussion about the fiscal note? I haven't had a chance to read it.
Absolutely. What are your questions?
Well, like I just said, I haven't had a chance to read it because I just saw it at the beginning of the committee, so.
It's about how this works. You get it in committee and you get a chance to look at it. I'll give you a couple of minutes to review it.
Could we have somebody just give us a brief overview of it?
I don't think the Department of, the author of I don't think they're here, are they? Is Adam Prophet or anybody here that can speak to the fiscal note? And the department and administration have not been attending meetings. Sometimes they will be online, but for the most part, it's, during the interim committees anyway, it was obstructive in order to conduct work because we did not have the availability that we needed for the department and administration at times. So please review and let me know if you have any questions. I can't imagine that there is a fiscal note to the state. That's what these fiscal notes are. Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 2, the Department of Revenue does indicate that the language relating to the revenue neutral rate requirement would have no fiscal effect.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any other questions? No. Seeing none, committee, what are your wishes on the bill? Senator Alley.
Madam Chair, I move to pass the bill
As amended.
as amended.
Thank you. Senator Baumgardner.
I second that motion, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Thank you. It has been moved by Senator Alley that the bill move out of committee favorably as amended, seconded by Senator Baumgardner. Are there any questions or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Would you like to be recorded?
Yes.
Thank you. Committee, the bill passes. I'll turn your attention. We'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 22. Thank you for your work, committee. Adam is online, and he is going to brief us on Senate Bill 22.
Thank you, Senator Tyson. Are you able to hear me?
We actually are not. It's very silent. Try it now, Adam. I think we
Are
can
you
hear
able to
you.
hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 22 provides for several changes, income tax changes. I'll go through these sections quickly. If there's any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer them. A lot of them are carryover from prior bills from prior years. Section 1 is a new section, though. This would preclude fraudulently obtained unemployment compensation as a result of an individual's identification theft would not be included for income tax purposes for income allocated to that person. Sections 2 and 4 of the bill would provide for several modifications for determining Kansas income. These modifications would include the global intangible low taxed income, otherwise known as GILTI, business interests, capital contributions, FDIC premiums, business meal expenditures, payment protection program loans, and corresponding expenses. These changes were all brought about as a result of federal legislation generally over the course of 2017 and most recently some of the CARES Act changes that occurred. These modifications will apply for tax years 2020 and thereafter. Section 3 of the bill would allow individuals who take the federal standard deduction to elect to take the Kansas itemize for Kansas income tax purposes. Excuse me. It would be the breaking of the chain, as commonly referred to, where individuals could itemize for Kansas income tax purposes, and this would apply for tax year 2021 and thereafter. Section 5 would allow corporations for tax years 2018 through 2020 or 2018 through 2020 to use the federal net operating losses when calculating their state income tax liability. And this would generally apply for the carry forward or carry back provisions. There's specific provisions in, I believe, the CARES Act dealing with net operating loss. So essentially, Kansas, for these particular years, Kansas would just follow what is done for federal income tax purposes, limited to these 3 years. And then also Section 6 would amend the expensing deduction that currently exists in statute. It adjusts how it's calculated by including certain Section 179 property deductions rather than excluding them. And additionally, it also opens up the expensing deduction to income tax taxpayers. Currently, this deduction is only limited to corporate taxpayers and privileged taxpayers. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Adam. Committee, any questions for Adam on the bill? Seeing none, thank you, Adam. Committee, I would draw your attention to the fiscal note. What I have done on this hearing is we're starting it today. We will complete it Tuesday, January 19th. And I spoke with the Department of Revenue. They will have a fiscal note on Tuesday for us to review. So we will have that, but we are going to begin in order to expedite the process. As I said yesterday, we are under a short window for legislation, so we're trying to move as quickly as possible with respect to everybody involved in the process. So this will be a 2-day hearing, allowing anybody that needs to, would like to, and especially with what we've got going on with our committee assistant, I do want to thank Sky. She's stepped in when Diane was called away and been excellent. But I don't know if you guys are aware, and I will make everyone aware, that everything has changed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Every day that the office assistants and the committee assistants come in, their process is being changed, not necessarily by their senator or legislator, but by the process itself or leadership or technology. And so I beg us to be very patient with them and diligent with them. They are working hard, and we do have a new committee assistant joining us, Michael. He's brand new to the building, and so we appreciate you guys helping him and working through the process. So, committee, I will continue with the hearing now. Thank you. Our first conferee, Eric, welcome back.
Geez. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Good morning. My name is Eric Stafford, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. Appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 22, ironically the same bill number as the bill Governor Kelly vetoed 2 years ago on the exact same content. So funny timing, funny how things work out. Never had that happen before. So this is an issue that's been around since Congress passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. 2018, we had a bill that we were pursuing, decoupling from these exact same provisions, plus the repatriation provision, which dealt with the historical aspect of foreign earned income. That is no longer in the bill. The bill in 2018 on the last day of session failed to pass in the House on a 59-59 tie. We had several folks from the House that were not there to vote that day, and unfortunately, we're unable to get to 62 and get this into law, so we wouldn't have to waste time in 2021 on it. So 2019 comes, we try to pursue the same thing. Governor Kelly gets elected in the fall of 2018 and vetoed that bill. Last year, obviously, with COVID, nothing happened. The state of the state last night, again, I want to reiterate, it was said last night that we cannot afford Brownback 2.0 tax cuts. Brownback tax cuts in 2013 or 2012 lowered income tax rates in the state. The decoupling bill, Senate Bill 22 before you today, would eliminate income that is now in the Kansas tax base starting in 2018 that was added because we are a rolling conformity state. We adopt the federal tax changes that are made. The GILTI provision, 163J, FDIC premiums, there's the capital contributions, those did not exist prior to 2018. They exist now, and therefore we are taxing them unless we proactively decouple and not tax that income. So structurally, in terms of tax policy, this is totally opposite of what Governor Brownback and the legislature did in 2012. They lowered rates, they eliminated exemptions. This protects exemptions and adds to them by allowing individuals to itemize. So you have the corporate side, you have the individual side. This has nothing to do with what the legislature did in 2012. It is intellectually lazy to say that these are Brownback tax cuts or corporate tax cuts. This is eliminating income from the base. That should not be there in the first place because the state never taxed foreign income, and we are now. We taxed foreign dividends. We have language in this bill now that deals with GILTI that is different than what was in the previous versions. Why is that? Because our Department of Revenue has said, well, GILTI is not a dividend. We have two companies that we are aware of that are being audited that, that all along our folks have been operating under the assumption that GILTI would be a dividend and that our 80% deduction would apply, therefore only taxing 20% of the GILTI income at our corporate rate of 7% plus apportionment. Our Department of Revenue is taking the approach that that 80% deduction does not apply, therefore all GILTI income is subject to taxation in the state. When the dividend applied, we had members who were saying that they would pay more in state taxes taxing that 20% than they will at the federal level, because at the federal level you have foreign tax credits, or you have tax credits for foreign taxes paid. So you offset that tax liability by deducting it from taxable income. So now we're going to tax all that money. So what we've said is for tax year 2018, 2019, that 80% deduction applies, and then prospectively. So we're going to say, okay, tax that 20%, but now we are going to decouple going forward, starting for tax year 2020. So that's a change that was made, but that was put in there because, again, the tax experts that we work with, representing our members, two of our member companies under audit are being told that 80% deduction does not apply, and all GILTI income is subject to taxation in the state. So that's the foundation of the bill. Again, this is not a tax cut. This is eliminating income from the base that never was in the base prior to December 2017. This bill is also different from last year and 2 years ago in the sense that there was the CARES Act issues. There was the unemployment insurance fraud victim issue that was added. Senate Bill 196 from 2 years ago and last year dealt with expensing, writing off, being able to fully depreciate and write off the expense, the deductions for investments for small businesses. That was a policy change that was passed, I think, in 2011, but then when the 2012 tax cuts went into place, small businesses had no income tax liability, lost their ability, or they didn't have the expensing option because they didn't have any tax liability. Corporations maintained that, the ability to expense their deductions, but when the repeal of the Brownback tax cuts passed in 2017, that language was never added back to give small businesses back that tax benefit that corporations always were able to take advantage of. So that is in this bill as well. That's just a good tax fairness piece. Kansas was actually, I think, the first state in the nation to allow expensing. When you make capital investments, expensing means when you make a capital investment, you can fully deduct the expense up front versus using depreciation tables. You know, real value of money over time is essentially the benefit of that there. So that is in this bill as well. So I'll close, let others testify. This is an important issue. It's year 3 of doing this, so you guys are pretty well aware of what the policy decision is and whether or not to do it. Fully anticipate a veto. After last night, I was optimistic, hoping that maybe that wouldn't happen, but I think that the message is pretty clear. So, but I would counter that message by saying that it is not Brownback tax cuts. That is entirely inaccurate. I think that opponents to this legislation just want as much money as possible for the state budget. So happy to answer any questions that you guys might have, and appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 22 today.
Committee, any questions? Senator Corson.
So the November consensus revenue estimate explains that my understanding is that federal CARES Act provisions are expected to reduce state general fund revenues because of the exact same conformity reasons that you spoke about, by $70 million in FY 2021 and by $36 million in FY 2022. Am I correct about that? Do you agree with that?
Honestly, I have no, that's the first time I've heard that. Do you know what provisions they're referring to on that?
This is tax relief that's part of the federal CARES Act provisions that are expected to reduce revenue coming into the state general fund.
Yeah, no, that's news to me. I'm happy to research that.
Okay, this is in the November consensus revenue estimate. So my question is, I don't hear you saying that we should not be allowing those changes to flow through and to impact us here in Kansas. But what we want to do is selectively decouple from certain provisions, but not decouple from other provisions that are reducing the amount of money coming into the state general fund.
I guess I don't know what's reducing revenues. We are asking to decouple from items that are adding to the state's tax base that we've never taxed before. And so these aren't subtracting from the state's tax base if we would have decoupled year one, because there was nothing in the tax base. So I don't know, Madam Chair.
I think my question is, we're saying that we should.
Please address your questions to the chair, and then I will give permission for.
My question to the chair is that my understanding is that we are allowing certain tax relief as part of the CARES Act to flow through because of conformity reasons to impact our state revenues. We're not decoupling from those changes that are providing some tax relief, but here we're trying to, selectively decouple. We're not decoupling from other parts of the CARES Act.
Yeah.
I'll
sorry.
address
Go ahead.
that. The way this works, the process is, if new to the Senate, is the questions are directed to the chair. The chair will decide whether the conferee answers the questions or not. It's a courtesy. Usually that is the way we operate. But under this, I will address that question in this fact that this legislation started as a result of 2017 tax code changes federal. We've seen it in 18, 19, and this year. And that's why the new language is not included addressing your concerns. You are more than welcome to introduce a tax bill addressing those concerns that you have. So thank you. If you would like to comment also, Eric.
Yeah, I will look at the November consensus revenue estimate report, Madam Chair, and see what they're referring to, because that's, Senator, that's entirely news to me. I have no idea what would cause from the CARES Act the state to lose money. So yeah, I'll look into that and get information back to the committee. It's interesting.
Senator, do you have any other questions?
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your diligence. Committee, any other questions? Eric, I would point out also that the foreign money, it will most likely go to another state or just not come to Kansas if we don't make a change.
Well, yeah, Senator, and that's what our members have said before when they've testified, and in the past we've brought people in and had tax experts from our companies, and this year, just knowing that we're on a potentially altered and short time frame with COVID and the uncertainty of the session, we didn't do that. But yeah, I mean, when companies look, where are they going to invest? This comes into consideration. If you are operating in multiple countries, then, and we have a member in Wichita, a manufacturing company, they're 500, 600 employees, so they're not huge by any means, but they have a plant in Mexico, and they submitted testimony 2 years ago about the impact of the GILTI provisions and the increased tax liability to their company. Companies are going to decide, well, you know what, if South Carolina's invested and they're decoupled, or North Carolina or Indiana or wherever, I mean, there's close to, I don't know, 30, 35 states that have decoupled now, especially on the GILTI provision. Our members that operate in multiple states, multiple countries, they bid out the services at multiple plants. And if they can't afford, if it's cheaper to build something in Texas or Utah than it is Kansas, they're going to create those jobs there. And, we talk about growing the economy. Again, I just saw last week that we still are in the top 10 of United Van Line's report of out-migration. I mean, this is a decades-long problem. This isn't Governor Kelly's fault. This isn't Governor Brownback's fault. It is what we have been doing as a state for decades, and it's setting up a policy that does not necessarily encourage investment. We're mediocre in a lot of areas, and we have to be competitive, and if we want to gain investment. So what we want everybody to be successful, whether it's Governor Brownback or Governor Kelly, because then the state's successful. The more tax base we have, the more money we have for schools, the more money we have for roads and the core critical infrastructure that folks love to fund here. So But as we continue to lose taxpayers, we're going to keep this high tax burden with fewer people to pay for it. And that's just not sustainable. So,
Thank you, Eric.
yep, you're welcome.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding from what your testimony has revealed that this is a new tax that did not exist prior to 2017. Correct. And it's on income that we normally do not count. Is that correct?
The guilty provision, yes. And I will say repatriation, so that was, the repatriation 965 was the 30 years of historical foreign earned income. And then businesses, and that means assets. It's not just cash. And back when we were first dealing with people saying, well, they're just going to bring all their cash back. We're talking plants and facilities and capital investments. We're not just talking money. So 30 years worth of foreign investments, the government was going to tax that. And that tax revenue, which could be paid over 10 years, is a way that they were going to pay down that new rate. Going forward, the guilty provision you're referring to, global intangible low tax income, was created to disincentivize the behavior that businesses were operating where they invested in low tax jurisdictions. So the federal government decided in their tax plan, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we want to guarantee that we're going to pretty much get people close to the 21% corporate rate that the federal government established when they lowered it from 35 to 21. You're going to pay if you are operating in low tax jurisdictions. So if you're operating in, you know, I don't know what a European country is that's not a low tax jurisdiction, guilty is not going to apply to you, but there are some where it will. That provision is brand new. And that's how they're going to treat that foreign income going forward, to try to level the playing field to create a tax system that discourages tax evasion. But, you know, people walk with money. I mean, if you're going to pay 30% here and 15% there, you're going to take the 15%. Everybody would. Yeah, but it did not exist prior to January 1, 2018.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So having dealt with large corporations that make decisions on where to put the new plants and where to put the new manufacturing, this is not a short-term decision that is made. It takes years to make that decision, and a lot of planning goes on in the back. Could you, and we understand this has only been 3 years, 17 through 21 or 20. But are there examples of companies that have chosen not to come to Kansas because of that?
I want to say yes, but I'm going to say no. But my no is with a comma. It all matters. I know that there are companies who have said we're going to invest. They still have a presence in Kansas, but they're going to invest somewhere else because of guilty, but also because of energy prices. Because, I mean, our employment laws in our state, our employment climate are really good. Our unemployment insurance taxes are really good. I mean, I know that's a big issue that Commerce is going to be dealing with, Commerce Committee is going to be dealing with. But I mean, overall, our UI structure, our work comp structure, employment law structure, very sound. But, you know, energy costs, we've talked before the Energy Committee, you guys passed the energy study. We've gone from 10th, 11th in the nation to 32nd, 35th in the nation in terms of our cost per kilowatt hour, where we have companies that are invested in Kansas, and it's like, you know what, we're paying half what we're paying in Kansas in energy costs in Oklahoma or, you know, somewhere else, and so they're choosing to go there. But you bring in the foreign income provisions, that's a factor too, and we know that that's a factor. We've heard from them that it's a factor. So I don't want to just solely focus on and say that is the reason they're not, because there are other factors as well. But it is definitely a factor for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, committee. We're almost out of time. Any other questions for Eric? Seeing none. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
I would ask of the conferees that are in the room, we have several, would you mind coming back Tuesday, January 19th in order to testify? I see a couple of nods. Would that, you cannot? Please, go ahead. Welcome to the committee, and we have your written too. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for accommodating me. I apologize I wouldn't be able to attend for next week.
Understandable.
My name is Michael Austin, Director for the Center of Entrepreneurial Government at the Kansas Policy Institute. And while Eric made a great presentation about the legislative history of this bill, I would love to make an appeal to this committee on the economic benefits of Senate Bill 22. You know, back in 2017, when the Kansas Department of Revenue made a presentation to the joint Senate and House tax committees about the fiscal effects and tax savings of this bill, you know, the idea behind it was Kansas needs to, you know, adapt their tax code so that they can better compete with other states and hopefully encourage more business. While unfortunately that, you know, bill has not been passed and made into law, or excuse me, it has not been made into law, I think that there's no other time than this year to get a bill like this done, especially when you think about the COVID environment. Remember what happened this, you know, in the last, 10 months. I believe small businesses are closed, roughly 30% are closed. Who knows whether they'll open back up. The Kansas job market is completely sluggish. We're going to have fewer jobs this year than we did last year. When we think about businesses that not only can't get back on their feet, but also can't hire because the labor force has been completely depressed, this will just be one extra step that the state can take in order to grow and hopefully encourage more investment. And I really do appreciate the additional CARES provisions this committee has added to the bill to make sure that those who do get CARES funding can not only not pay taxes on it, but also can deduct expenses, so that can really help encourage more investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not sure all the committee members were aware of that change. That was definitely came from me. And also committee, the identity theft, that you don't have to pay income tax on money that was stolen. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Michael. Okay, committee, really quickly, Mark, do you mind coming back Tuesday? Is that okay? Okay, great, thank you. Elizabeth, wonderful. Okay, so we have one conferee online. Emily, are you able to join us Tuesday? Or would you like to, we've got about less than 5 minutes. I want to give them time to clean the room after we leave, but you are more than welcome to give your testimony if you would like. And,
I'm happy to come back on Tuesday. I think the priority would be getting the room clean.
thank you. I mean, we have 5 minutes if you want to testify.
I can testify now.
Okay, that would be great. Go. And if I may, before I forget really quickly, when you turn in your testimony, I know you guys are used to this, but would you please, on top of the testimony, to help out our committee assistant, specify that you are a proponent, opponent, or neutral on the testimony if you are in person, online, or written only. That will greatly help our committee assistants. So thank you. Emily, will you continue? Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, Chairwoman and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak today in my first testimony of the session to voice our opposition to Senate Bill 22. My name is Emily Fetch, and I'm the Director of Fiscal Policy at Kansas Action for Children. I am here today because of our concern that this bill will hinder the progress we have made as a state and create more inequality at a time when so many Kansans are already facing challenges related to their health and employment. My written testimony discusses the corporate provisions of the bill as well, but today I will focus on the itemization component. According to last year's analysis done by the Institute of Taxation and Economic Policy, or ITEP, regarding a similar bill, most benefactors of the change to itemization would be in the top 20% of Kansas earners. For the other Kansans in the remaining bottom 80% of the income distribution, only 13% would benefit from this change regarding itemized deductions. This proposal would not drastically reduce the tax liability for low and moderate income taxpayers, who have been the population most affected by COVID-19 and the economic downturn. Instead, it would overwhelmingly favor the highest earners in Kansas, who have been the least affected by the economic downturn, and in fact, many have benefited from the K-shaped recovery. If the goal of this legislation is to help those in Kansas experiencing economic insecurity, I applaud the goal. However, I would encourage you to consider alternatives more targeted to low and moderate income Kansans, such as reinstating the homestead property tax credit for renters and strengthening the food sales tax credit. According to the US Census Bureau Household Pulse Survey, nearly half of Kansas families with children have had some period of job loss since March. And 1 in 5 Kansas families don't know if they can make their next rent or mortgage payment. We know that it is low and moderate income Kansans who are most likely to have suffered job and housing insecurity, and these are the families that deserve our focus, not changes in tax policy that help big corporations and the highest earning Kansans. We are eager to work with the Senate Tax Committee to find other solutions to help Kansans in a more targeted and fiscally responsible way. Thank you for listening to our testimony, why Kansas Action for Children opposes this bill, and with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Emily. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, I have a couple. One is on the itemized. One of my constituents actually had a major medical health issue, and they were not allowed to itemize their medical bills. And I won't go into their personal, but they are facing bankruptcy. You would prefer those individuals not have the option to itemize on their state income tax return?
I think what I want to convey is if we are worried about people who are on the economic brink and experiencing economic security, that they would go bankrupt from a medical expense, I think that there are other solutions and other alternatives rather than the itemized deductions that could help individuals such as your constituent.
I would be anxious to get a list of those to send to my constituent because they have exhausted every avenue. It may look like the corporations are the big benefactors, but I know that it's the small businesses, the small individuals that had a exorbitant, some of them, tax increase as a result of not being able to itemize on their state. In fact, I know of taxpayers who their state tax obligation was higher than their federal as a result of this, not changing this legislation. Are there any other questions or comments for Emily? Emily, do you want to respond to that?
I would just say, Chairwoman Tyson, I am happy to send ITEP's analysis that shows who stands to benefit from the itemized deduction component. If that would be helpful, I'm happy to discuss that further with you and the committee.
That would be fine. I appreciate your input. And committee, are there any other questions for Emily? Thank you very much for your testimony, Emily, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Is there any other business to be brought before the committee? We're going to suspend the hearing on Senate Bill 22 until January 19th. We will continue the hearing on Senate Bill 22, pick up with the proponents again. And then, committee, for your information, I plan and hope to work the bill on January 21st, Thursday. So we'll finish the hearing on the 19th. You'll be able to take a good look at it, and we'll work the bill the 21st on Thursday. And we also have a hearing on Senate Bill 21 on Thursday. It's the Cherokee County sales tax. Are there any other questions? Thank you, committee. We're adjourned.